Oliver Costello is a Bundjalung man from the Northern Rivers of New South Wales with a diverse range of personal and professional expertise in culturally connected stewardship of country. He is currently focused on First Nations knowledge and practice in caring for country through regenerative cultural practices that support preparedness, recovery and resilience in relation to fire, floods and storms. And haven't we been hearing a lot about all of those things just yesterday? He has extensive experience working within the Indigenous land and sea management, conservation and cultural heritage management sectors, and has been particularly interested in empowering Aboriginal perspectives on fire, threatened and culturally significant species. Oliver set up Fire Sticks Initiative in 2009 and was a founding director of the Fire Sticks Alliance Indigenous Corporation in 2018. So you're bringing a tremendous amount of wealth of knowledge with you today, thank you. He currently serves as the Executive Director of the Jagun Alliance Aboriginal Corporation and is the Vice President of the Northern Rivers Fire and Biodiversity Consortium. And today he will be talking about learning from country. Could you please welcome Oliver for his keynote address.
Boogle Bear. Jingler Blugme, hi everyone. My name's Ollie Costello. I'm going to talk about learning from country. In Bundjalung we say Jagun for country, and Jagun. So we're going to yarn about learning from Jagun. But before I do that, I just really want to start by acknowledging country, paying respects to elders past, present and future here, where we are, but also where I'm from and where you're all from and all your old people too. Like everybody goes back to being a First Nations connection somewhere, in the world. And so it's really important that we honour all our ancestors, all the work that they've done to get us here. But in particular, there's a few people, I'm not going to mention all the names, that have been really instrumental to me. So I just want to acknowledge all those old people too, the knowledge holders. And not just the human people, but all the kin as well, all the old people. Particularly, I show this slide, so I want to acknowledge I've got a lot of dads, and one of my last ones, this old fella's gone now, Billy Alawanga, he really inspired me, literally to get off the couch and sort of do something, because I've always wanted, people know me, I always want to do stuff. But I spent a long time really struggling, really, having a hard time in the world, and it's happened a few times, so just try and get on with the work. But yeah, that old man, was one of those old men that was born in the bush and grew up in the old way, learnt the old law and stuff, and I never spent much time with him, he physically didn't actually teach me much. But it was a huge inspiration. And he shared some things that have really helped guide me and still guide me, and I keep continuing to learn. And one of the reasons why I show this image as well is, I guess it's just the embedded nature of lots of knowledge. That's why, acknowledge all your old people, all your ancestors, the way that you think and behave, and, a lot of that's because of them. And so there's memory there, but also, we have the ability to change. We have the ability to take the nature that we've been given, and to nurture that into things and grow things and evolve and stuff. And so this is an example of the layers of knowledge, that old man inspired me, and I really wanted to do something about getting people on country, getting out on country, and started learning about fire. And then years and years later, I found this painting in a academic book. I'd never seen this for years and years, of the old man painting of the brown falcon moving the fire stick, and that was after I founded the Fire Sticks Initiative and Alliance and stuff. So it just shows that over time, you turn up in places and you do work, and we've got some of the bunya mob here and stuff, and we've had experiences where we just end up on country and you just have this sense of connection and with country and each other, and it brings more knowledge. So anyway, I'm going to run out of time if I spend this much time. I don't have heaps of slides. I'm not going to bang on about all these, but yeah, I guess I do a lot of different stuff, and I've got a bad habit of saying yes and but yeah, basically it's just I just want to care for country, and I get asked to do stuff all the time, and I just do whatever I can to care for country, and that's the nature of the kind of work. Nalina Bilan Boyan Goan Boyban Jagani Warabra Mangali Mother Butheran. So we learn from wind, rain, flood, lightning, hail or fire. They teach us stories. Nalina Garama Lila Jagun Garama So we care for country as country cares for us. So that's a bit of a language statement that I wrote with Uncle Rick Cook, and Uncle Rick turned into language. I might have missed a few marks there. I don't know if there's any Bundjalung speakers here, but always just try and get it out, eh? But it helps to try, and sort of try and bring that language back into your voice. So Uncle Rick and Marcus put those words into some language, and that was from the State of Environment report. So I'm going to reflect a little bit on the State of Environment report, but largely it's just trying to kind of think about how we understand country, how we learn from country, and these message sticks that Marcus carved and painted for the Natural Hazards Research Australia to kind of symbolise the importance of, and that was the original kind of thinking around fire sticks, was like, fire sticks for making fire, and bringing people together and understanding fire knowledge, but also message sticks for sharing knowledge, the importance that comes with sharing knowledge, like, going to get caught up here. So on that note, I just wanted to try something. I've got all these jokes I'm trying to work on, but I'll try some new material. But I thought I might do something a bit more serious, and because to be honest, like, I'm a bit of a storm character. I sort of whirl around and turn up in places, and I guess I just want to kind of bring something that's relevant and useful. And today we're here, talking about plants and talking about learning from country, and I'm going to spin a few yarns, but before we do, I just thought it might be nice just as an offering, if people want to close their eyes. You don't have to. It's just an opportunity to close your eyes, and just take a moment just to breathe in. Remember to breathe. This is my remember to breathe thing. And just take a moment to become present with where we are. And as we breathe in, we're breathing in the air. And as we breathe out, we're breathing out. And it's a moment to reflect on the ancestors and all the old people, but particularly the plants that clean the air for us. They clean the water too. There's humidity, not much in this room probably, but there's air and there's water in the air as well. And so part of this is an opportunity to be grateful, respectful, garama, like thank you. As we breathe in, like be grateful for the ancestors, for the plants, for what they give us. Like without them, we can't breathe, And as we breathe out, we can give back to them as well. Because recently became a net zero commissioner, and I'm thinking a lot about emissions now. And it's one of my jokes that we shouldn't talk too much, because the more we talk shit, the more emissions we create. But in a good way. We should understand that reciprocity, as we breathe in, and we have to do it, we have to keep breathing. We have to understand the responsibility that comes with that, to care for the breath that we are given, and to use the energy that we have and the voice that we have really wisely. And for me, like one of the things that has really grounded me, and that's a part of that grounding is, like the plants, like they came before us, our ancestors, and they teach us to be grounded. They have ways of being that are hard for us, because I like to jump around and dance around and stuff, so it's hard for me to be like a tree. But I do want to be like that tree, and to be able to bend and move and shape and understand the power and the energy that the plants have given me, because that I'm all mixed up now. I had it in my mind this morning. In the same way that fire shapes the landscape, the plants and, the sun, Jagun comes up, this is all, everyone knows these stories, the energy, cycles. And then we eat the food, the plants and the animals into our belly. So the belly is like our engine, it is our fire, and so as we are, breathing in and, we're breathing out, we have that reciprocity with country. And we have to understand that relationship, that kinship. I'm getting lost now. So part of me wants to talk a bit about fire and sort of jump to the integrated knowledge system and talk a bit about the kinship story. But So firstly, it's just understanding that, like I said, that, you know, storms, fire, floods, you know, they've shaped the landscape for millennia. And this also shaped people's custodianship of lands and waters and stuff. And so our knowledge and practice has been shaped by the seasons, by the resources. And I'll talk more to that, but here's an example of that reciprocity. You know, we did a burn, it's 2018, around Jagun, the Aboriginal community near the Clarence, so on Rocky Creek. Yeah, and then a few months later, a fire come through. And you can see the community been somewhat impacted by the fire, and the fire jumped the river and ran up the hill, and we did a burn and the fire went out there. And it's not to say that fire is this, you know, old people's knowledge and cultural burning is like a silver bullet for fire, but it's showing that there's a relationship there between the community, the landscape and fire. And that's been shaped over thousands of years, that relationship between people. Before the people came, that relationship was going on between fire and plants and animals and stuff. And so that kinship, that relationship's, it's really old, and our old people have learnt some of that kinship. And where that sort of kinship story started for me, really, when I look back, is a birth story. And I'm going to have a go at trying to pull up this, and I've got a backup plan if it doesn't work, and talk a bit about the integrated knowledge system. It might not work now. How do we do that? Might need tech support. When I pick up the link, it doesn't come up to doesn't visualise. Anyway, I'll just speak to it. Oh yes, please, thank you. Remember to drink as well. Not sure that's going to work. Can you have a look at it? Anyway, I put some backup slides just in case. But basically, I'll tell a bit of the story. So, how do we do that? So we've, sorry, best laid plans. There we go. That's it. That'll do. And then just increase. I've got it from here. Thank you. All right. Great. All right. So here we are. All right. So I'm going to tell a bit of a story about Boogum Bootharum. So Boogum is the Bundjalung word for bean tree, black bean, Moreton Bay, chestnut. And this tree is really special tree to me because my parents, I think, you know, because they were hippies and stuff, planted my placenta under a boogum tree in the backyard of the house that I grew up in. And so the first tree that I learned about, the sort of tree that I learned to climb, and I've got a prop here, so I'm pretty sure everyone knows what they are. But, you know, they've got these little pods that are like canoes, you know, and these beans that you can throw around, and, you know, they've got a lot of story and stuff. So, you know, I just grew up with this tree. Yeah, and it's kind of like it's a personal connection. And as I grew older, I started learning some cultural stories about it, you know, and I'm going to spin a few yarns about those cultural stories. And then I went on this big fire yarn and learned about fire and fire sticks and stuff, and Richo's in the room. And yeah, and a friend, Emily Enns, and, you know, started geeing me up a bit. Oh, do you know about black beans? I was like, oh, that's my birth tree, you know, but I'm really focused about fire. All I think about is fire and stuff. And she introduced me to Mauricio, because Mauricio had done some work on the genetics, looking at the genetics of the black bean and other colleagues, and how they'd ended up in the northern rivers, you know, like sort of it'd be better explained to me, but, you know, basically not very diverse genetically. You know, they've come to the region from somewhere. How did they get there? You know, because they're pretty big to eat, like whole, but they're also poisonous. And so some animals eat them, but they chew them up, you know, so they're hard to disperse through animals. So how do they end up on these like plateaus and these like spring lines on ridge lines and stuff? How do they end up there? You know, they do get moved through floods, and they can travel through the sea, but unlikely that they've ended up in these places looking at how long they've been in the landscape. So, you know, like 5,000 years or something, I think we're talking about genetically. Looks like they've been there. Yeah, so started yarning about that, and yeah, just started unlocking those sort of just personal stories and local cultural stories and genetics and different mapping and stuff. And it raised this question, not for the first time, but how do we, like, where do we put that knowledge? How do we share that knowledge? How do we visualise that knowledge? So for the last few years, we've been building this integrated knowledge system. It's not finished yet. There's a few different bits of it. This is one bit. It's in a GeoNode platform to do the geo stories to kind of show people kind of some of the work. There's another bit that's been built that's sort of where we put the information and how we access and share it. But I just thought I'd just go through this as a bit of an example of sort of having a yarn. I'm not going to tell all the story now, but about how a personal relationship to a species can tell a story. I'm going to run out of time here. Look. And how we can start to communicate and visualise that and start to embed other knowledge. So, this is my team's put together this bit of a narrative, but we've sort of got we're telling a bit of a story. And so this is a scrollable map about Boogum. So like I said, it's a food resource, it's a cultural story, it's got a whole heap of different stories. And I'm not going to tell the stories in detail now, but one of the key stories that I learn about is the Nothing Gully story, the songline story. And so Julian Rocks in Byron Bay, this is up on the Coolum Scenic Lookout, so looking out to Byron Bay and Julian Rocks. You see that rock in the distance, probably can't really see it there. The map's live in the background, but anyway. It's a songline story for that ancestor. Nothing Gully's a grandfather, like a creation story. And in that story, the old man has dilly bag full of beans, and as he moves through the landscape, he shapes the landscape, and the beans fall out of the dilly bag. And when we look at where the beans are, it's sort of hard to get behind here, and where the songline is, you can see the song. Number 1 is the Julian Rocks. Number 2 is where I'm standing, and that red line is us sort of tracing a bit of that songline. And then we go down further. I'm going to jump around now. And we look at where the populations of the beans are. Sorry, jumping around. You can see sort of some of the correlation there. It's not the best example. Anyway, I'm scattered now. So there's a correlation between that songline story, Nothing Gully. There's also, you can yarn about Jagun and the sun, and another story is the Drungan. And the Drungan story is another big story, but it's like for us mob down there, we're scared of Drungan because some people call her a witch, but I think it's more just that she's a really powerful spirit that lives in the water and shouldn't go to places where the Drungan lives and muck around there. And so we have a sacred bean story that talks about not taking the beans from the sacred beans areas, and if you do, you get sick. And so there's a story about an old man that moves the beans. There's a story about an old woman that says you can't take beans from certain places. You have to learn the law about how to clean and make the beans safe. And so if you get taught that law, you get told not to take them from those places. And those places where the beans are sacred are like the increase, the durable, the source places. And we have a lot of different animals and plants that have that story. It's like there's places, there's times, there's types of species that you don't take them because they're the leaders and the source for the future, you know what I mean? So they're our elders and our young ones, yeah? And so different relationships. So that Drungan story is teaching us, so not only have we found the story about how our old people move plants into the landscape and there's law around that, there's a lot of other plants we don't know. We can't tell that same story. The beans aren't real big and poisonous, but a lot of people be moving a lot of things around, yeah? And then we have a story about, essentially the first protected areas. Like thousands and thousands of years ago, there were places that the old people said you can't take things from there, you can't do things there. And so in the same way, we have those stories about fire, about different species. So I was trying to give you a sense that in the landscape, there's all these stories. And so the integrated knowledge system is a place where we can start to build stories and talk about information and work out how to share those different bits of information. So I'm going to run out of time, but I just wanted to kind of just do the last little bit. Just show you some of it, really. It's a lovely little interface. That we can there's my biological father, AJ, under the trees, and and just showing kind of how they can naturally move, but also how we can nurture them, how they can be dispersed, as the beans fall into the water and spread like canoes, and one of the other stories we don't talk about in this is the three brothers and how the three brothers are strong paddlers and they came back to or from back to country or from somewhere else, and just that how do we tell these stories about change, and the importance of custodianship. And that's really kind of the main sort of message really around what we learn from country, and, you know, is about sense of place, sense of custodianship, and how we learn, and how, you know, plants and animals and, you know, and are really like our greatest teachers, because they're great sources of truth, you know, like they teach us about who we are and where we are in the landscape, and they help guide us, and that's one of the things that's really special to be here today, you know, and to be here with the Bunya mob as well. You know, our old people used to come up this way through this part of the landscape on their way to the Bunya festivals that would be across the landscape. But also Bunya mob used to come down our way, down to, you know, where the rivers meet at Toowoomba, at Lismore, and, you know, and we dance and we tell stories and share knowledge. And I think that's really what we need to see more of in the landscape. We need to see more of our young people being supported to practice their knowledge, and work with the old people to tell these stories about how the landscape can be shaped by good culture, good practices that understand kinship and respect and responsibility. And really that's the opportunity that we have for a brighter future, is to understand how do we restore these landscapes through understanding them as cultural landscapes that we're a part of, and understand our kinship and responsibilities as custodians. I think we might take some questions if I have time. But yeah, sorry, a bit disjointed, but yeah, Boogle Bear, Walla Walla, thank you for the opportunity to share, and if we do have time, so take
Thank
some
you very
questions.
much, Oliver. I think the statement that so resonated with me from your talk today is that plants teach us to be grounded. And that's just, we take that for granted, I think, but that's why we're all here, right? Is to try and work out the systems. The other thing which we can also learn a lot from is the integrated platforms. And thank you for sharing knowledge this way. It's very important.
It needs to be integrated because it's all over the place.
Well, that's good. We can learn a lot from that too. Yeah. So we do have time for questions, and we're going to rove around with the microphone, and if you could just wait till that arrives at your table. Okay. Right.
There's one collect.
And then we have another one down the front after that. Thanks. If you could just say your name. Where you from?
Yeah, Paulie Spearham from Gamilaroi country. One question I have for you, Neff, is those traditional connections that you spoke about the importance of travelling through country, carrying our law systems with us. You know, you mentioned they're travelling up through Jarrawa country up to the Bunya festivals. Gamilaroi people did the same thing, and we travel back through your country there now, and Jabulan. But we carried with us those stories, song and dance line of our plants, of our insects, of our water. So is that really important for you to pass on to non-Indigenous people?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's about, like I had all these things I wanted to say, and then I just end up rambling about stuff. But basically, like knowledge is to be shared and used, yeah? Like when we breathe in, like you have to breathe. You can't keep it, You can't keep that, like hold on to it, You have to let it out, and that's that reciprocity and relationship with the country. And it's the same with people, then that's the old people's way, is to like share what can be shared and can be understood in a good way for reciprocity. But there's some things that like won't be understood, even if, like you say, a lot of times we say things and a lot of people don't understand. The people that need to understand, hopefully the ones that are listening will get some of that. But obviously we have to be careful too, because I didn't tell that big yarn, but one of the things that fire teaches us is about the responsibility, the protocols around like the power of like fire, like the fire stories that people have. Mainly about like there's like clever people and people that can make fire. People know how to use fire in a good way. They can make food and they can make light, and you know, like campfire, you know, like food and light, but also in the landscape. You can make food and you can make light, you can make pathways, and a lot of the old pathways are fire pathways or water pathways. And so, but old people teach that, you know, like some people think, oh, you know, that fella, he knows how to make fire. Look, he's real greedy, and you know, like, why can't I have that fire? You know, and all of those stories, you know, when people get sleepy or they go, you know, like they go for a walk, whatever. Someone, you know, hasn't learnt the law, hasn't listened, hasn't paying attention, will come up and be like, oh yeah, grab a little bit of that fire, grab a fire stick, like steal a fire stick, not learn how to make fire, not learning how, you know, like through connection and, you know, like find a tree and understand knowledge, you want to steal a fire and run off with the fire. And that's how a lot of animals, you know, like they'd be marked by that fire because they'd be cheeky, you know. So a lot of the stories about animals and plants are about learning law. And that's why we have to share that law. But there's bits that, you know, layers and stuff that need to be shared over time or only with some people, yeah, so the knowledge gets embedded across the landscape. And that's why the ceremonies of the old people are so important, because there's all this knowledge embedded in all the families. And the same in the trees, they're all families, yeah. And over time they come together and they create kinship. They create like a forest, they create a family, you know, but they have different ways, and some of those ways are a bit cheeky, some of the ways are better, some of them are different perspective, you know, like people see things in different ways, and that's why it's so important that we have really strong relationships and we build trust and connection so we can keep each other healthy, keep each other in line, you know, and that's a lot of the law story ceremonies, people come together and sorting out problems, and making sure that people understand what's working and not working so they can support each other to maintain good relationship. Otherwise they start to not camp together and they start to get worried about, oh, what are they talking about? What are they doing over there? And they start to get problems. And that's what we have now in a lot of places, people not communicating, not sharing knowledge, not sharing who they are, the kinship that we have, the plants and the animals, our identity and that. People misunderstand and conflict comes. So that's part of that, bringing back the stories for ceremony and being able to share that with everybody, so everybody understands where they live and the rules that are there that are for everyone. There's some things that are for different families and communities that need to be protected for them because that's their stories and their law. And if everyone's taking that, it's like, you know, it's creating like problems as far as like people misunderstanding identity. They don't know who people are anymore, and that's part of the work, is bringing back identity. And, you know, plant yarn is a big part of that. Yarn is like bringing back the plants that tell the story about the land, the ones that belong there, the ones that have nowhere else to go, look after them so other people understand where they are and who they are and how to live in that country in a good way.
Terrific. And we've got a question down the front here. Steve, did you? Right, you can follow up later. Okay. Please join me to thank Oliver. That's terrific.
Thank you.
It's very generous.